Hey you guys, as promised, I am going to do a book summary on Suzanne Venker's The Alpha Female's Guide to Men and Marriage, How Love Works. I'm going to be doing this over several different days, so you'll see me in different outfits in the course of this video. So let's begin. First of all, she writes this book for women in long-term monogamous relationships, married or not, where the man is, a decent guy. He's non-alcoholic or mentally unstable or a wife abuser, okay? So we're assuming that you have a good guy there. He's not abusive, he's healthy, sober, and safe. Okay, so she starts out with making the distinction between a strong woman versus a strong-willed woman. A strong woman is hot. A strong-willed woman, I'm going to say like a strong-willed man, is controlling and has to have everything her way, which is a turn off. Having to be right is really a dead end. It just causes the other person to resist you, and the need to control and to be right really is based on fear and a lack of trust, which are really toxic qualities to bring into a relationship, not just for, I'm going to add this, not just for ourselves, but also for the relationship. So there are ways that you can learn to deal with that in yourself. But again, if you have a good man in your life, you don't have to be afraid of him, and you can trust him. Some people may have to do some inner work though to get to that place. She has a quiz that you can take to see if you're alpha female. I'll just read a couple of the questions to kind of give you an idea. It's on page 31 of the book. I tend to be bossy. And let me take that back. Scratch the whole quiz thing, because she gives a sampling of a quiz that someone else has, and it has different color codes. So forget that part. Okay. Then she talks about that there are advantages to being a beta female, which is that beta females are happier, more relaxed, and easier to get along with. Excuse me for looking down. I had to take notes because usually I free flow and I have to get all this. And that you have to be vulnerable to have love in your life. Now, there's been a change in society in that women are more masculine and men are more feminine, because they thought, I'm digressing here, but men think that if I just keep my woman happy, she'll like me, but he ends up becoming a people pleaser and a doormat, which is a turnoff. And women have become very powerful in the workplace, and then they don't know they have to shut that power off in their personal lives. Because in a relationship, it doesn't work well when the woman is the bossy one or the main breadwinner. She becomes resentful, or when she's controlling, the relationship loses its natural synergy. The relationships tend to work better, and there's more synergy in a marriage when the man is the dominant one. A marriage should be complementary and not competitive. So, how can you change this habit? It's just a habit that you can change. She herself used to be very alpha female. So, to change a habit, tell yourself what you will do. So instead of criticizing your husband when he doesn't clean up quite right, or chastising him in public, or telling him, what he does isn't just right, or belittling him, you would just controlling him. You'll just tell yourself, okay, I choose to say nothing. Tell yourself, I choose to say nothing. Maybe even imagine yourself, I choose to say nothing. And so the next time he says next time he, cleans the kitchen but leaves the crumbs on the counter, instead of saying, well, why didn't you clean the whole kitchen? You left the crumbs on the counter again. Choose to say nothing. Just choose to say nothing. And here's the tip, and I love this. I love her final tip here in this chapter, which I'm going to hold up so you guys can read it if you want. Take a screenshot. Let me read it to you. For 1 week, practice being a different kind of wife by doing everything opposite of the way you would normally do. For instance, when your husband says something with which you disagree, say something like, "That's interesting." Where you would normally interject your opinion, don't. Where you would normally complain, say something positive. Where you would normally instruct, ask. Preferably with a please or a thank you. Where you would normally say no, say yes. You get the idea. Then see what happens. That's the end of chapter 1. The next chapter is called Decide to Stay, and that has to do with your attitude. A lot of people have the attitude that marriage is unnecessary or is not permanent, and that motherhood and marriage are not important to a woman, that her career is the entire reason for her existence. But really, the more traditional way that women thought, or that women really naturally are, is that love, relationships, and family life are the center of our life. So let's honor that. And also to realize that the purpose of marriage is not to make you happy. You are responsible for your happiness. So whenever things don't go your way in the marriage, don't bail. You've made a decision to stay. You have a good man. Focus on the good in him. The alpha woman is critical, and she's always trying to maximize everything. A lot of women think, well, if I just left, I could find a better guy. That never happens because you're taking yourself with you. So find your own happiness and focus on the good things in your relationship. Happiness, there's a kind of happiness that comes from getting what we want, but it isn't lasting. And there's a more enduring type of happiness that comes from how we look at life and for being grateful for what we have. So let's focus on that kind of happiness. Happiness is not what happens to us or getting what we want. Decide to stay. That's the end of chapter 2. So I decided I don't want to keep doing a summary of this book. I mean, no one's paying me to do it. It's not going to help me get audience. I just really recommend that you read this book. It's the basic premise of it is that women are taught to be the bossy and controlling, and they have to let this guard down to be in a relationship, and that what men really want, a man naturally wants to make a woman happy, but I also believe that a woman wants to make a man happy. What men want most is respect, companionship, and sex. And women really want to be doted and pampered upon. If a man gets respect, companionship, and sex, you're going to bring out the best in your man. If you want to change your relationship, change yourself first. You could just as easily talk to the man and have him be the one to change the relationship, but this book is written for women. When one person changes the relationship and becomes more from a love place rather than a controlling or power base, it changes the dynamics of the relationship. The other person no longer has to resist you. She just had some super great insights in the book, but I don't want to spend 3 hours going through this whole book again just to do this video. So I apologize. I'm going to just say I changed my mind in giving you a chapter by chapter summary. I will say the final chapter is Say Yes to Sex is a really good one, which is that have sex even if you're not in the mood, because it brings you closer together. And it's really good for your relationship. I can also attest to that. If you have sex, it's really good for your body. It's good for your psyche. And there are a lot of prostaglandins and testosterone in ejaculate. I have intercourse with condoms. I've read that when a man ejaculates in a vagina, that the vaginal walls will absorb the testosterone and increase her sex drive. So I've been making more intent on swallowing ejaculate and leaving it on. I do like to leave it on my face when men come on my face. Because it can be, I know that the skin can absorb things and the mucous membranes in the mouth. And maybe that's why I've been so horny lately. Because I've been like taking all this calm, or maybe it's from my Pilates, which also releases, sometimes when I'm doing these Pilates moves, I get like, feel like crying. I tell my instructor I have to stop for a sec because it activates like some inner nerve pathways. I don't know, but my sex drive is really on point. I'm 59. I still get horny. I still masturbate, and I still enjoy sex, and I don't need lubrication. I don't need to use lube for intercourse. But I'm not horny like a guy that I would just go out and fuck anything that walks. I digress. Sorry about that. I just want to make the point that sex is really good for you. It's really healthy, and it's really bonding to the relationship. I would say too that from my own experience when I was married, I was for many years critical of my ex-husband. That wasn't good. And when I stopped being critical and started being really nice to him, our relationship improved a lot. So the last 3 years we were together, our relationship was really good because I was not critical of him anymore. He started asking me on dates. He started wanting to spend all this time with me. He hated grocery shopping, but every time I went to the grocery store, he wanted to come with me. He was just, so that does make a huge difference, but no matter any of that, he still was holding on to resentment, and he still couldn't give me what I needed sexually in that relationship, and I couldn't be with him. So I'm not saying when you do these things, it's a cure-all, like the way she makes it sound. Well, if your husband is non-alcoholic, abusive, or mentally unstable, this will work. I disagree. There can be other instances, like someone is not holding on to resentment, or they're emotionally unavailable or avoidant, or the universe or the gods have just decided that your time is up and that you're meant to go on to different journeys. You know, I liken it to a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. You can turn into a butterfly. I think that people have to try everything in their marriage first, and I'm glad that I did. But that doesn't mean that your marriage will work, but still will be helpful for people to do these things anyway, because it's all personal development stuff, and marriage isn't there to make you happy. It's a vehicle for growth. And while it brings you certain benefits, it also brings you certain disadvantages. There's also a chapter in the book where she talks about money, how people should join their money and not hoard their money and have their money in a joint account, but that it's also important for each person to have their own discretionary spending so that they're not having to ask for money. And often the man is the breadwinner, but the wife manages the money just because he wants her to. That happened in my marriage too. And then you don't want the husband having to come to the wife to ask if he can have money to go out to lunch. You know, that feels very emasculating. So we did what she recommends in this book, like that he had his money go direct deposit into my checking account. And then I would have a direct thing every month where I would put a certain amount of money in his checking account. That was just his money. And then my money just went to pay for the bills and I did all the investing and stuff. But I would say that when it came to the investing, I did have some control issues with that. We had later on, because I was really into, like, we got to buy gold and silver stocks, and at some point they weren't doing so well anymore, and he wanted to sell them, and I remember feeling like so panicked because I was so sure that gold and silver would take off after the housing bust, but it didn't. He was right, and I learned that I'm not always right. And we did argue, like, about the houses. I relented and agreed to live where he wanted, but I never liked any of the houses we had. But I knew that was the sacrifice I made. In exchange, he let me do what I wanted with the kids and all the money I spent on their activities, which was like $1,000 a month I spent on their activities. And I think that was maybe one thing that made him resentful. So marriage does have downsides. You have to compromise, and you have to look at the good of the family rather than just your own self. So marriage is not a panacea to solve all your problems, because it will solve some but create new ones. Overall, I think her book is very well written and has a lot of really great insights and some deep thoughts in it. It's not one of those fluff books. I read a lot of books. Some of them are just fluff, or they're just saying the same thing over and over in too many words. Her book is not like that, so I highly recommend the book. And thank you for watching my video.